is indoor air quality. Let's record this. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jared. Pillar to Post Home Inspectors, largest home inspection company in North America. It is a franchise, so we are all over North America. I cover the Wasatch Front, but I'm primarily Utah County. There's another Salt Lake office. But really that's more about where we do things like this. So I do this kind of stuff in Utah County. He does it in Salt Lake County, but we're both all over Wasatch Front. There's another one in Park City, Midway, and then another guy down in Cedar City, St. George. And so I've worked with all of them. I know the guy in St. George. I helped mentor him over the years. I know Jen has even done a bunch with him down there. So we've got you covered all over the state is what I'm trying to say. Pillar to Post, we do all kinds of inspections, all the other due diligence stuff. Just a few things with what we're seeing in the market lately. I think I mentioned this in the last class. Some of the biggest changes that we see is that more and more clients are worried about all the other stuff. So where a few years ago it was kind of the inspection, they might add on radon. Now it's about 30% of the inspections have a mold test and a sewer scope and a radon test and a meth test and a termite inspection. And so all of these things. And so where you used to say, tell your client, yeah, plan on like $500-600 for an inspection. Yeah, if they want the very basic, most clients are spending more in the $800 to $1,200 range. That's just, which if you think about it, that's not even double what they were spending 5 years ago on inspections, yet homes have almost doubled. So relative wise, people are still spending about the same percentage of an inspection. It's just our prices haven't gone up as fast as the homes, but people are now saying, well, I'm going to use that and I'm going to add on more other things for that peace of mind. So this class, this is one of my favorite classes because this class I've been teaching for probably 15 years. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are things that I've applied into my own life and I know firsthand on a lot of these things. So there is a ton to go through. Feel free to jump in if you have questions. Oh, yeah, I couldn't find it. I forgot to make sure it was actually working with all of our different setups. There we go. Okay, so what we want to be covering is, with this class, is we're going to talk about the air that you're breathing in your home. We're going to talk a lot about, what we're going to do is go through all the different things that are in your home that you're breathing, and then we're going to go through and talk about each one of those things and what you can do to improve that. If there's enough time, we'll talk about just some more kind of the advanced technologies and things that you can invest. But the big thing is where there's a lot of stuff that just, it's not like you have to go and invest a ton of money to improve air quality in your home. And that's one of the main messages. So this is one of the classes. I have 30-something classes that I teach for real estate CE. This is one of the classes that is probably more applicable to a homeowner, not so much to you as an agent. Obviously, it's going to play into your, into your sales and helping your clients, but this has a lot of application just even in your own life. So, bottom line, the air in your home is probably dirtier than outdoor air. Whenever I say that, people say, well, what about inversion days? Yes, that's the exception. When you have a lot of pollution outside, you're going to get a lot of, don't go for a jog when air quality is super bad outside. But in general, when mom would say, get out and get some fresh air, there was truth and benefit to that. And that's what we're going to go through as we talk about all of these things. One of the things that when I talk to clients about air quality is a lot of people, when we think about, oh, I need better air quality, the only thing we ever think about is this middle one. When I'm trying to improve air quality, we think about, I need to get a filtration system to remove the contaminants. And we forget about the other two ways that you can improve air quality. One is by just reducing them to begin with. So that's what we're going to go through, is talk about what are all these things that cause poor air quality. And once you know, you can limit some of those things from even getting into your house to begin with. And then the other one is just diluting it. For certain contaminants, sometimes you can't really remove them all. There's no way to reduce them. And so the only option is getting some fresh air. And so sometimes we forget about that. I was just talking about that to a client last night because we inspected a home yesterday and it still had a swamp cooler. We were just talking about how no homes have swamp coolers anymore, where 15 years ago, it was pretty common for people to have swamp coolers. Swamp coolers bring in a lot of fresh air. They have a lot of other issues they can be bringing in too, but now we all have air conditioning. We want to keep the bill low, so we close up our house, keep everything sealed up, and so we don't get fresh air in our homes like we were even a decade ago. In kids over the last 2-3 decades, how many are going outside and getting the fresh air versus sitting at home on a screen? Obviously, a lot of this comes back to the health and how it can impact us. Asthma, allergies, lung conditions, all of those things are going to impact air quality. Where this really hit home with me is my son, he's 13 now, but when he was really little, he had a lot of respiratory issues, a lot of sleeping issues, and we saw all this correlation as we dove into it. He went and they did sleep studies. He was snoring. They put him on a CPAP when he was like 5. Try to get a 5-year-old to wear a CPAP and sleep with it. That didn't go well. We finally got him adenoid surgery, and that helped things out. But through all that, we learned all of the things that just sleep can affect children in their development, in their behavior, and what would be causing him to have poor sleep. A lot of it comes back to air quality, especially with him where he wasn't breathing very well. And so we learned a lot of, it's not just, so one of the things that to me was the biggest impact with this improving your air quality is it can improve your overall life. Because if your air quality is better, most people, their sleeping quality is affected by how well they're breathing at night. That's why so many people are on, if you scroll through social media, you're seeing all kinds of devices and things to sleep better and snoring and CPAPs and all things like this. It all comes back to you need to breathe better to sleep better. And so that's where this class really can improve the quality of life in many aspects. Some people are going to be more affected than others when it comes to poor air quality, and those are going to be people who already are struggling to get the oxygen and things that they need. So infants and small children, their lungs haven't fully developed. Pregnant women where they don't have the space as that baby gets bigger, they don't have the lung capacity, but they're also breathing for 2. And then elderly where their lung and their respiratory system is starting to not function as efficiently. So they are going to be even more affected by poor air quality. Childhood asthma has quadrupled since the 70s. Depending on which industry, they have different statistics to show what's causing that. It's either your diet or there's a lot of things, but one thing that a lot of things point to as a cause for that is air quality. If you think of homes built in the 40s, 50s, 60s compared to homes built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and newer, one of the biggest differences with building science is in the 70s is when we started really focusing on energy efficiency. Homes built prior to the 70s, they were drafty. We didn't insulate. We didn't have double pane windows. And so the fact that we are now sealing up and enclosing our homes more and more airtight started in the 70s. So there is a correlation there that attribute a lot of these asthmas and respiratory issues to. There are immediate and long-term health implications when it comes to air quality. You have allergies, asthma, that can be day-to-day, seasonal, but you also have long-term things like, when we talk about radon. Radon is something that can lead to lung cancer, long-term effects, heart disease. They're starting to find even when you have poor respiratory, you're not sleeping very well, you're not breathing very well, can also cause other complications in heart disease, blood pressure, things like that. Okay, so these are the pollutants that we're going to talk about. These are the things that are going to be in your home. I apologize if you want to go home after this and clean. I have all agents all the time saying, thanks a lot. I went home, I had to get this done, I had to shampoo the carpets. But at least you know where to focus those efforts. Dust, allergens, humidity, VOCs or volatile organic compounds, very small particles, just a kind of a catch-all for a bunch of other pollutants. Mold, radon, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. So we're going to talk about all of those, and these are all in all of our homes. And again, we're going to go through and kind of talk about them, and then we'll go back through and talk about what we can do about them. Dust, major irritant. Little kids, that sun ray shining through the lights, you're chasing all the little things that are floating around, dust flying through the air. We all have dust. If you figured out a way to not have any dust in your home, congratulations, your calling is probably not in real estate. It's in, whatever you're doing to do that, because everybody would love to not have dust. I will tell you at the end of this class, you will have some things to reduce the amount of dust. That's another thing that I hear from a lot of agents who've taken this class is, hey, I don't have to dust my house as much. So stay tuned and we'll talk about that. Just on the note of dust, what is the dust in your home? A lot of people think it's dirt. I grew up in Montana. It was about 2 miles before I got to any paved roads. So for us, a lot of the dust was actually dirt, because every time a neighbor drove by, which we didn't have too many of those, big cloud of dust from the dirt roads. So that's what a lot of people think of as dust, is dirt, but it's not. What is most of the dust in our homes?
Yes.
It is actually a large, depending on which study and how old the house is, if you have pets or not. Some statistics will put it as much as 70–80% of the dust in your home could be skin cells. Brand new house, not as much. Brand new house, you'd be surprised how much dust is just coming from brand new carpets as the fibers are breaking down. New furniture, new drapes, all of that, just things breaking down. But yes, skin cells, and that plays into allergens. The air turned off. Pets, obviously, if you have pets in the home, that's going to trigger allergens for some people. Dust mites is one that a lot of people don't think about. Dust mites are in our home. They're all over. That's what they look like. Don't confuse these with bed bugs, even though dust mites are a bug that live in our beds. These are microscopic. You won't ever see those. Where a bed bug, you would be able to see them. Bed bugs kind of feed on you, suck your blood. Dust mites, they eat skin cells. That's what they love. That's why they hang out in our beds, because there's lots of skin cells that we shed when we're sleeping. One of the most common asthma triggers. So a lot of times where people are allergic to the dust and things, it's actually dust mites that they are more allergic to. So we'll talk more about these.
It's actually good because they do need the skin cells. To get rid of them. I mean, how else do they go away?
Vacuuming, dusting.
But do they help?
I wouldn't say they help. It's just kind of something that's there. I mean, are the skin cells probably not going to be as damaging or invasive to our body? It's their excrement is really what triggers as they eat it. Their waste products are what triggers a lot of the asthma. Same thing with cockroaches. Cockroaches, a lot of people are more, it's not the cockroach, it's the cockroach dust. They're waste products. Yes. So we'll talk more about dust mites. Dust mites are a big one, in my opinion. So humidity. Humidity is not really a pollutant, but we talk about it because too high of humidity and too low of humidity can compound all of these other pollutants that we're talking about. So let's talk about high humidity first. Obviously, if things get too humid, you get mold growth. You can get fungal growth, bacteria growth. Tend to thrive in more humid environments. Dust mites. Dust mites will propagate and reproduce more quickly when the humidity is higher. You can get damage to the house, just all kinds of stuff. Now, we live in a desert, right? So we don't have to worry about high humidity. Yes and no. We do have, because we live in a desert and because we have such extreme temperatures, we still run into humidity problems. Whether it's we're not using the bathroom exhaust fan, so the bathroom is constantly humid and condensation is building up. Or we're cooking a ton and that condensation is going out and we don't ever open the drapes. And so there's all this condensation and mold and stuff growing around our windows. So there is an issue with high humidity. Now, low humidity is the one that a lot of people don't realize, and it has more to do with our immune system. So part of our immune system is the mucosa. So that's our eyes, our nose, our mouth. It's that moist barrier that has pollutants and things that are harmful to our body come in contact with our body. It's a line of defense. So our eyes, our nose, our mouth, saliva, all of that acts as an initial barrier to prevent those things from invading our body. When humidity is really low, that mucosa dries out and it doesn't function as well. And so one of the things that you can look at is, it's pretty much universal. Yep, in the wintertime, everybody gets more sick. Well, why? Well, it's because we're all indoors and we're all cooped up more. Yes, that's a factor. Humidity levels are significantly lower in the wintertime than they are in the summertime. So that, again, compounds that. Plus, so now our immune system is a little bit lower because things are so dry and we're all cooped up and all the kids just went back to school and we're seeing all of our family over the holidays and so humidity, when it comes to our immune system, too low of humidity can cause problems in that our body is constantly dealing with all of these pollutants, and by lowering some of those defenses, our body can't deal with some of them as well. Oh, there's our first keyword. All of you virtual attendees. All right. Okay, VOCs. This is a big one, and we've started doing a lot more testing for VOCs in the last couple of years. More and more people are having autoimmune disorders or other health related where they just can't figure it out. They have sensitivities and they don't know what's going on. And a lot of people are sensitive to different chemicals. So anybody who, well, I can't be around certain cleaners, or if someone has too much perfume, it triggers, some people will break out with hives, some people will have headaches, some people, their eyes will start to burn. So these are all VOCs, so chemical compounds that our body doesn't like. They can be in cleaning products, but they can also, a big contributor is building products. So the glues that are in a lot of new building products will off-gas. It usually was within the first 18 months. That they'll off gas. And so I'll get calls every once in a while and say, hey, I need you to come test my house. Okay, what are we doing? Well, I don't know. It could be meth, maybe it's mold. Okay, tell me about your house. Well, we just moved in, it's brand new. Okay, let's look at VOCs. And that's a big problem that we run into. I had a client, we did a huge inspection for up in Draper, and she calls me about 6-8 months later and she says, hey, I can't find some of the reports that you did. I said, okay, well, how you been? What's going on? She's like, well, I've just been sick for 4 months and we can't figure it out. We went away on vacation. This was like February. She's like, yeah, we went on vacation and right after the new year and we were gone for about 3 weeks and I felt great. We came back home and it started up again. So it's something in our house and we're trying to figure it out. And it was like coughing, respiratory. This was before COVID. So, someone with a 4-month cough wasn't, well, what could that be? And so she said, my doctor wants me to find some of these reports because we'd done radon tests and mold tests. And I remember when we'd done the inspection that she had a builder there and they were planning on doing some major renovations. And I said, hey, what renovations did you guys do? And there was this huge, it was like a 6-car garage, and there was this huge bonus room, like 1,500 square foot bonus room above the garages. That I remember her saying that she was going to turn that into kind of her workspace and studio. And I said, what did you do? That's where you're spending most of your time. What did you do up there? She's like, oh, we gutted that out and we rebuilt it. It's got all built-ins and, well, particle board, which is what makes up a lot of furniture, a lot of built-in stuff. It's held together with lots of glues and lots of off-gassing. So we talked about formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a VOC. And the symptoms of formaldehyde, this is VOCs, but also definitely formaldehyde. Headaches, irritation of eyes, nose, and throat. Can't even get skin reactions, hives, nausea, fatigue, dizziness. We started talking through it. She's like, yeah, that. And then she said, you know what? My son, we did a bunch down in the room where he's always spending a bunch of time. We did a bunch of built-in for all of his, I think he was a musician or something, for all of his equipment and things. And she's like, yeah, and he's the other one that's suffering a lot the same thing. So again, once you start looking at some of the different VOCs, it can point to what's causing some of your overall health effects.
Is there stuff like we can get rid of mold?
VOCs, so one of the big ones with VOCs, for example, formaldehyde is a big one. Formaldehyde can be a carcinogen. It's in a lot of the glues, in the flooring, in furniture, some carpeting. That new house smell, that's a lot of VOCs. Formaldehyde, for example, is such a small particle, you can't filter it out. So with formaldehyde, the only way you can really get rid of it is to dilute it. You've got to get fresh air into the house. The good news is with most of your building products and the off-gassing is most of it is gone within 18 months. So keep the windows open, keep fresh air going. If you're going out of town, crank up the heat. That can actually cause it to release a little bit more. A lot of people are like, oh, let's just turn down the heat while we were out of town. Well, if you're trying to get things to off-gas, yeah, crank up the heat a little bit. It will usually off-gas more in the summer because it's warmer, but usually people aren't as careful and they're getting a little more fresh air in the summer. So we'll talk more about some of the VOCs and things that we can do when we get into some of the remediation things. Next category is very small particles. So this is just kind of the catch-all for all these other things, but it's the stuff that is small enough that your normal, just your breathing, your respiratory immune system isn't going to be filtering it out very well. And so it can get into your lungs. It can cause other problems. One of the biggest contributor to this category is smoke. So smoke can come from candles. It can come from incense. It can come from cigarettes. Vaping would kind of, certain vaping compounds can be in the VOC, depends on what's coming through there. If you're a bad cook and you just tend to burn all your dinner, that could be contributing to it. So that's your very small particles. Those are just things that are going to get small enough that you could be breathing them in. And it gets far enough into your body that your immune system has to deal with that. It isn't filtered out. Like if you go onto a construction site and they're sanding down and your nose gets all stuffed up, right? And you blow your nose and you get those dust boogers from being out working in the yard or at a construction site. Those are much bigger. That's your immune system has done its job. You're getting rid of it. These are the ones that get past that first line of defense. And now your body's like, oh, wait, this is something foreign. We got to deal with it. Now your immune system is spending energy on other things. And so that's where we want to avoid that.
Peter, some of us really like to burn the candles.
Well, it's not just that, it's the wax is really the particles that you're breathing in. And as it's burning down. So that can be VOCs, that can be, hold that thought, because we're going to get into some different things, essential oils.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. Mold. So we could spend hours talking about just mold. Obviously, it can be an allergen. It can be an irritant. Most of your negative effects with mold are really an immune response. So think of it, you just have really bad allergies. So when you hear about someone that's got really sick because of mold, it's really no different than someone that is allergic to peanuts and they actually accidentally got some peanuts in their meal that they ordered and they weren't supposed to, and it triggered a reaction. In most cases, that's what's going on with mold. Just kind of as an aside, are any of you allergic to penicillin? Okay, anyone know anyone that's allergic to penicillin? My daughter is slightly allergic to penicillin. Guess what one of the most common indoor molds are? Penicillin. So if you do have someone that's allergic to penicillin and they go into a house that's very high with penicillin mold, yes, they're going to have symptoms. And so that's something to keep in mind is we always hear, well, mold is bad. Well, That's like saying bees are bad. If you're allergic to bees, which I'm allergic to, does that mean all bees are bad? No, it's just bad when I get stung. So are all molds bad? Well, they're not good, but they're really only really bad for people that are sensitive to that type of mold when they're getting exposed to it. So mold is an issue. We should not have it in our homes. What I always tell people is mold is never the problem in our homes. Water is the problem. Mold is just a symptom of what that water is causing. So water, fixing water leaks and condensation problems, that's what we need to address when it comes to mold. Radon, again, another one that I think we've done the whole hour class in here. Radon is a radioactive gas, comes out of the ground, gets into our homes. How many homes in Utah have radon? High radon? Well,
1 out of 4, I'd say.
it's 1 in 3 for Utah and Salt Lake counties is 1 in 3. Every home has high radon. I mean, every home has radon. Where the EPA says you should be getting a system, in Utah, it's 1 in 3 homes. If you go off of the World Health Organization, so this is just something to keep in mind. There's a lot of radon companies out there that are obviously trying to get business. And one of their methods is to go and offer free tests, which is great. Everybody should be testing their homes. One of my challenges is the World Health Organization, which is an organization kind of like the EPA as far as setting standards that a lot of the rest of the world follows. Their guideline is 2.7 picocuries, where the EPA is 4.0. So just be cautious, because we get calls like this probably every week where, hey, this radon company came and did a test and they're telling me my house is unsafe because it was a 3. Well, 3 is higher than the World Health Organization recommendation, but it's below the EPA recommendation. And we could go off, and I'm happy to explain and pros and cons. 4.0 is what 4 is the one that in the US we have adopted, standardized. If you want to get technical, where the numbers vary is if you've ever smoked or if you've never smoked. So not if you're a smoker, but if you've ever smoked or you've never smoked, the risk for a non-smoker who's never smoked between 2 and 4, between like 4 and 8, is the same risk of getting cancer for someone who has smoked between 2 and 4. So if you look at what's my risk of getting lung cancer, if I'm living in this house at 2.7 for majority of my life, well, pretty low. You're more likely to die in a car crash if you've never smoked. However, if you have smoked, you're about 5 times more likely to die of lung cancer than in a car crash, even above that 2.7. So again, from a real estate perspective, from a legal, which there's really no legalities, but from a standard of BPA, it's 4.0.
We don't really have stuff on that, or like.
No, just like, 50 years ago when the doctor would come in and give you a checkup while he had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and that was totally acceptable. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. So a few things to take away. Number 1 is your home does not have any carbon dioxide detectors. Don't ever ask. Don't ever expect it.
Carbon dioxide, what we breathe out.
Exactly.
Right, so why would you do that?
Exactly. It's what makes your drinks fizzy. That's carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide. So I remember it by saying monoxide comes from motors. It's the exhaust. It's from burning fuel. Is deadly, can kill you. That's what we have our detectors for in our house. But it never fails. I have an agent. Yeah, it's not a CO2. It's a CO detector. But CO2, we always think about it's carbon dioxide. That's what we hear more, because you breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. Yep, plants are breathing it in and they're letting out oxygen. We're doing the opposite. That's the ecosystem. So, however, carbon dioxide can be considered an indoor pollutant. So if all of us were stuck in one of these conference rooms for a few hours, we're constantly using up the oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide, and you start to get that foggy brain. You've been in a meeting, a stuffy room where it's just like, oh, I can't even think straight. I need some fresh air. That's carbon dioxide poisoning. And that is a measurement that they will do in public buildings as a means of determining is there enough air circulation in a home or in a building? Too much carbon dioxide will leave you, I thought I had it on here, leave you drowsy, your brain kind of slows down, you can't think as well. It's enough of an issue that a lot of the casinos in Vegas will pump excess oxygen through the air conditioning system to counterbalance the carbon dioxide, because if you're awake and alert, you're going to spend more money than going back to your hotel. So carbon monoxide is the one that we're worried about in homes. That's the one that's more deadly. But again, both of those are issues that could be an issue of air quality in our homes.
Wait, carbon dioxide comes from gas stoves?
You do get some carbon dioxide from gas burning appliances that are burning efficiently, so they are putting off carbon dioxide as well.
You mean like a gas cooking stove?
Yeah, yep. So last weekend, when everybody had their turkeys going all day long, the house was all closed up.
No wonder everybody fought.
Everybody's a little, you get that kind of lethargy from eating all the turkey. You've got a little excess carbon dioxide, and everybody slept really good Thursday night. Okay, so just to summarize, and then we're going to go back through and talk about remediation. There's a lot of things that can affect the air quality in our homes. There's a lot of things that one of the biggest problems is with modern energy efficiency guidelines is our homes are sealed up. And so some of these things just keep building up, and we don't ever have a way of getting fresh air in. And so they accumulate. A big thing about 10, 15 years ago was sick house syndrome. You've heard that term a lot. It became really big after Hurricane Katrina, and all these people, these families were displaced. They stuck them in these temporary housing. Turned out that temporary housing was made up of a lot of particle boards. So all these families were starting to get sick. They were calling it sick house syndrome. They didn't really understand. Now you don't hear much about it because, well, it's not sick house syndrome. I mean, you still have the symptoms, but now we know it's VOCs, it's poor air quality. We can point the finger at some of these things. So how do we fix it? How do we improve it? A few things to keep in mind. Well, as we go through all of this, one concept to really understand when it comes to air quality and allergens in our immune system is there's a tipping point. There's a point where, for example, I am allergic to cats, but I can be in a room with cats. I can walk around. I can even pet a cat. But if I pet the cat and then touch my face, that's my tipping point. That's where my body says, okay, enough is enough. Because what is an allergic response? An allergic response is really our body saying, hey, this is something we don't like. We're going to put up the defenses. And so it's going to trigger all kinds of things in our body. It's going to make our eyes start either watering or swell up. It's going to make our other glands and things in our respiratory system kind of swell up to prevent more things from entering. That's the defense mechanism that it has. It's an allergen response. But if we can keep our defense system from saying, whoa, we've got a problem, then it doesn't start triggering all those reactions. And so just like with cats, I know that, okay, pet the cat, go wash my hands, I'm good. That's my threshold. All of these things that we go through, if we can get that, we can stay below that threshold. Because when it comes to air quality, our end goal is we want to breathe better. We want to be healthier. We want to sleep better. So obviously we want good air quality. Perfect air quality is not possible. We're always going to have all of these contaminants. But if we can improve our quality of life by keeping our immune system under that threshold, we're going to feel a lot better. So that's what we're not trying to get rid of all of the dust mites. We're not trying to get rid of all the humidity problem. But if we can keep everything a little bit better, we're going to notice huge improvements just in our quality of life. So we'll go back through all of these different ones and talk about what we can do. Reducing dust. So dust, we have it everywhere in our home. Vacuum cleaners and carpeting. So let me just, one of the tests that we do is an allergen test. where we vacuum different areas of the house and we collect a dust sample and we send that off to the lab, and they're able to analyze it at the DNA level for cats, dogs, mice, cockroaches, different types of things that trigger allergens in most people. I decided to do a test on my house. We had renovated, so we had carpet. It was now 7 years old. And I knew kind of the timeline. For the first year of that brand new carpet, we had 2 dogs. And then the dogs died in that first year. We had our first child around that same time. My wife was like most other mothers, extremely got to keep everything super clean for a newborn baby. So we were vacuuming and carpet shampoos and all kinds of stuff for those next couple years. About 4 years, 3 or 4 years in, we got a kitten, but I'm allergic to cats. So we kind of kept it in the dog crate, but it was still cold outside before we moved her into the garage. So there was a brief period of time where I'm sure the cat got around and ran around while I was at work. But other than that, we're vacuuming, we're shampooing, we're doing all that. But there was a good 3 to 4 years with no animals or anything in the house. We did that test, vacuum up the dust, and still super high levels of dog and cat allergens after years of vacuuming and shampooing. And even before I did the sample, I vacuumed like 3 times over the carpet. I'm going to get up as much dust. We still pull up dust and still. So carpet really is not great if you have a lot of allergies and dust problems. But on that side note, one thing, my clicker just fell apart, is get a better vacuum cleaner. So a lot of vacuum cleaners will have HEPA filters. HEPA stands for high efficiency particle accumulator. That's going to really filter out those really fine particles. The problem is a lot of people don't pay attention to that. Over time, that HEPA filter will stop functioning. So vacuum like Dyson, a lot of Dyson vacuums have a washable HEPA filter. But the thing is you have to remember to wash it and then let it dry out for a few days before you replace it. So one thing we did is bought a second filter. So, I need to clean that out, wash it out, put the new one in, let the old one dry. And so I was always rotating. Some of them, especially like the smaller Dyson, like our cordless one that we have, just has a removable filter. Again, same thing, or disposable filter. So same type of thing. A lot of vacuums will have that disposable filter, and they'll even say, hey, you should replace this every 8 months, once a year. If you're not, then it might not really be filtering out anything. So that's something to keep in mind. Central vacuum cleaner. I always, talking to agents, this is always one of those things like, oh yeah, this house has a central vacuum cleaner, whoop-de-doo. Well, if you want a way to pitch that, a central vacuum cleaner is one of the best things you can have for air quality, because what makes a vacuum cleaner not very good is because it's sucking up everything and it's trying to capture as much as possible, but everything that it didn't capture is just going back into the air. The difference with a central vac is the discharge is usually outside. So 100% of what it's sucking up is either getting caught in the dustbin or it's getting vented outside, where a traditional vacuum is just recirculating. If you've sat through any of the like rainbow vacuum, that it's that one of the things I'll say is not only is this a vacuum cleaner, it's an air purifier. Has anyone heard that? So the reason why is because it's basically doing what the central vac is. It's pulling all of that through a water reservoir, which traps 100% of the particulates. So it is purifying the air as it's sucking through, but your central vac is doing exactly that. You just don't have a nasty reservoir of water to dump out because it's just dumping it all outside. So get that central vac tuned up and then talk to your buyers of how wonderful their air quality is if they can use that central vac. So reducing dust, obviously fewer carpets will help dusting regularly. Because again, it's not just the dust, but as we talked about, the dust mites are feeding on that dust. And a lot of people are having allergies and asthma that's triggered by the dust mites that are feeding on the dust as well. So here is going to be this is the big one that I've done a lot of experimenting with over the years, and it has to do with your furnace filter. Are we on time? Okay. So jump back to when we had 2 dogs, no kids. My parents lived in Montana. They'd come down in their motorhome, and my mom is pretty allergic to dogs. So my mom could handle about a half hour in our home before her allergies would start triggering. I'm kind of selfish. My siblings also, well, I had another brother had also bought an old house here in Utah. So my dad's a contractor. I had a house built in the 50s. He had a house built at the turn of the century. Dad would come down and help us fix up our houses. I was selfish and said, well, if mom can't stay here, they're going to park at my brother's house. So we got to figure out how to keep mom and dad here because we need more work on our house. So I was a little selfish that way. So definitely motivated because my wife would say, well, we're not getting rid of the dogs. Okay, what do we do? So I started researching room purifiers and air purifiers and what can we do to do that. And that rabbit hole search, I ended up on an article that basically said a purifier is a fan blowing through a filter. It's blowing your air through a filter and it's trapping those particulates, those allergens, and that's how it's working. So why not leverage a system that's already in most homes where there is a fan blowing air through a filter and just get a little bit better filter and let your fan run all the time rather than just when you need to heat or cool the house and do that. So I'm like, that sounds easy. I've already got, a furnace. And when we bought our house, it came with one of those big, thick, like 4-inch filters compartments. So, okay, we can get a really nice filter. We can put it in there. Most people will look at the furnace filter as it's there to protect your furnace. And as I've taught this class over years and years, I inevitably get agents coming back and say, hey, I talked to my furnace guy and he does not agree with you. Okay, yes. So now I'm preemptively telling you what to expect. The furnace guy, his primary concern is your furnace. If you put in a bigger filter, a better filtration, if you run it more, yes, it's going to put a higher load on your furnace. Now I'm looking at it from an air quality perspective and from an overall cost perspective. When I was looking at it at my house, I could buy a purifier at the time. So this is like 15, 20 years ago for about $400. Was a nice, that would cover my whole great room. $400, great. Or I could get a little bit better filter and there's a thermostat, on your thermostat, there's a switch that says auto or on for the fan. Auto means it will kick on the fan when it needs to heat or cool. On means it's going to run 24/7. Your smart thermostats now have like a recirculating feature and things. So I turned it on. I'm running it 24/7. Worst case scenario, my furnace again, theoretically could decrease the life, but really what is it, the part that's going to fail? The fan. How much is a brand new fan? At the time was about $500. So I can either buy and filter one room, or I can filter the whole house and maybe have to buy a new fan, or for sure have to buy a new room purifier. So that was my logic. My filter or my fan on my furnaces now in 2 different houses and 3 different furnaces has always been running 24/7. I've never had to replace a fan. And then the other thing, and I have a picture of it. Another thing we found when we were trying to figure this out with my parents was they make a activated charcoal carbon filter insert it was just a one size fits all. You cut it the size of your furnace and you attach it to the filter and put it in. So if you know, activated carbon is like a sponge and it filters out chemicals and odors and all kinds of things. And so we added that with the filter, put it in. It was running for a few weeks before my parents came. My mom came in and said, wow, thank you for kicking the dogs out. The house, and she was in there for a few hours. Huge night and day difference with how she was feeling. She was convinced that, yes, we had kicked out the dogs. So it made a huge difference. On a side note, So those activate, so you can now get a lot of filters that have carbon built into them or charcoal built into them for removing odors. It will also help remove a lot of VOCs and chemical compounds. If you have a listing, this is just coming from an inspector that I see a lot of the side of clients and walking through houses that agents don't always see. When you set up a bunch of air fresheners, what I hear as a home inspector is, what are they hiding? If you use the activated carbon, it will just remove the odors, so there is no smell. So that would be my recommendation with your listings that have, especially those old houses that are now vacant and they get that old house funk. Yeah, just kind of like, ugh, it's not very inviting, right? And so unless you're planning on going and baking a big, batch of cookies right before each showing, that's what I would recommend, is find those activated carbon. In recent years, I've seen 3M and Filtrit. Those are the two major manufacturers of a lot of furnace filters. They made one, and it was more targeted at pet odors, for removing pet. So I would look at those. Makes a huge difference. So let's talk about the filters. You have different types of furnace filters. This is your typical filter. This is what we were doing. This is what your furnace guy is going to tell you, because this is going to provide maximum airflow, minimum effort on the furnace to be moving air, and still protect the furnace from too much junk and stuff and damaging the furnace. They're a 30-day filter. Might be a few bucks. Does nothing for air quality. These ones, so a lot of times all you have is a slot where you can fit a 1-inch filter. So then you want to get these. The higher the number, the tighter the filter, the harder your furnace is going to work, but the better the airflow. Now, you are going to reach a point where if you restrict the airflow too much, especially your air conditioner, could ice over. If you're not moving enough air, then it can damage some of the system. So you're just going to have to figure out what's going to work best. Your furnace guy won't be able to tell you, because he's always going to tell you less is more. Yes, for the furnace, not for air quality. Now, what's the difference? And if this is really a big thing, then I would say talk to your furnace guy and have him install a compartment for, these are called high efficiency filters. So think of like a colander or a sieve, has all these little holes, right? The smaller the hole, the more it's going to filter out. But the smaller the hole, the slower things will move through it. So if I have a whiteboard, I can kind of draw this. So I have a 2-foot by 2-foot filter, and let's say it has 1 million little holes, and only so much air can blow through those holes at the same time. How do I get those holes smaller for better filtration, but I move more air? Well, one way is make more holes. Well, how do you make more holes? I've only got 2 feet by 2 feet. Well, you take that, make a lot more holes, and you fold it like an accordion. So now the surface area is triple, and I have triple the holes, but they're smaller, so I'm getting more airflow in the same amount of space because it's a tighter. So now you compound that, instead of a 1-inch, it's a 5-inch or a 4-inch or 3-inch filter. You have that much more airflow. So that's why it's called a high efficiency filter, because it is more energy efficient, because you can move a lot more air and you can be filtering out a lot more particulates. Overall, this is going to be most cost effective because the energy efficiency is going to be better. These, you only need to change about every 8 to 12 months. So yeah, you're going to be spending 20 to 30 bucks on it, but you only do that once, maybe twice a year. Versus these, you might be $20 to $30 a piece, and these are only good for 3 months. These ones I just don't recommend.
So you don't go even.
No one. Trust me, I check them every day.
When you review properties at that, the coordinate one, the one on the left, is better for your furnace as well as your furnace.
Exactly, because it's moving a lot more air with a lot less effort. So that's the other thing too. If you're
He's only so big. So like, can you just add that thing itself to hold it in over here?
So
like,
usually,
it'd be like a rack or something.
Yeah. So usually this, so a lot of furnaces, what we see most, especially in the last 10, 15 years, you have the duct coming down and you have a big thing that you just slide up and you stick a filter in. You can fit those in there, but you got to make sure you kind of have to kind of brace it in place so that you're not getting air going around it. So that can work with that. The ideal is they will come and they'll install that. It's a compartment that holds one of those perfectly and seals up. That's what's ideal. So you might be $300-400 to have them come in and install that, but then you're set. So these are okay. That's what's definitely recommended if you're really worried about long term.
Is that gonna keep the air flowing the way the furnace guy wants it to?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, yeah. And so that's what I've seen. A lot of HVAC guys now are just by default putting one of these in. Just because they know that people are going to want this, and then it's going to, cause problems down the road. So, and when you're doing this as part of the install, it's like an extra $50-75 to them in materials. Because if you're doing it as you're building the ductwork, there's no extra labor really. So I do want to touch on electronic air filters. So electronic air filters create a static electricity, which allows a lot of the very fine particles to cling to it. These are a few different types of electronic air filters. This is a very common upsell from an HVAC guy because in about 20 minutes, he can wire it in and it fits right into the same compartment that these do. Yeah, and he just upsold you $300-400. And yes, these will do amazing things. Oh, you have a lot of allergies. Oh, look, this is going to make a big difference. Yes, factual statement. In practice, absolutely not. You're going to probably have to clean this out. If you have allergies and it's usually people with a lot of pets in your home are going to add, I can't remember what the number is. The amount of skin cells that we shed off when we take a shower is in the millions. Unless your dog is bathing and getting bathed every single day, all of those skin cells are coming off and going into your environment. So bottom line, if you have one of these, in theory, they're amazing. In practice, they are useless because you have to, about every 3 to 4 weeks, pull it apart. This piece and this piece get thrown away because that's just like your little $2 filter. So you throw that away. This is like a screen that you have to wipe down and get all the dust that's accumulated on there. So you've got like a half-hour process plus the materials to go and put all this back together. And like you said, who even does it every month? Once this gets clogged up, it's
going to affect the functionality.
It's definitely going. To me, these are useless. That's my opinion. These are amazing. They're very expensive up front. Same concept though. I don't trust, in 18 years of inspecting homes, maybe have seen one of these that's been maintained. Because, okay, these old ones, yeah, you had to pull it out, take it out, hose it off, wait for it to all to dry out, and then put it all back together. The newer ones are a little more convenient. You can pull them out and put them in the dishwasher, but still, that means you're shutting down your whole HVAC system for half a day while you pull it out, wash it all. It's an electronic system. You can't just like throw it in there all wet. You got to make sure everything is dry. Put it all back to. I have no faith in homeowners. I'm sorry. I've seen enough homeowners, their homes, but it's not going to happen. So yes, in theory, these are amazing. If you have really bad allergies and you have a good process for maintaining, then yeah, do it. By all means, it's going to be amazing. Yep. Every year, just yearly though. I think I have a slide on that in just a second. Blower fans, we're running out of time, but just know that I did the math. Most of your newer furnaces have high efficiency motors, and we're talking like maybe you're going to run again. Well, what about all the electricity you're running that blower fan 24/7? Well, if you buy a filter, it's going to have a fan that you're going to. So to me, that's a non-issue. Oh, there's our keyword there for virtual. All right. So very small particles. All right, we got to get going. again, better furnace filter is going to filter that out. Limit those candles, incense. So again, to your comment, what should we do? I have a client that I've been working with for a couple of years now. She has a lot of health issues. We keep finding different areas with mold. We found some in the crawl space, found one in a wall. And so we keep going back. And at some point we did a few tests. Her health wasn't doing very well. We did the VOC test and it was off the charts. But she also has a million essential oils going all the time. She's using lots of cleaners because she has compromised immune system. So she's constantly disinfecting. And so her house was over 10 times the VOCs that I usually find in homes. So again, you may be trading one bad for another. So yeah, we're keeping things really clean, but you are maybe using chemicals. And even though they're essential oils and they're natural, they still are compounds that our body may not be dealing very well with. So I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, again, if you're suffering from issues, you do need to look at them as an option. As far as the smells, for one, again, reduce, dilute, or remove. Number one, I would go for that carbon filter first to remove the odors. If you just want things to smell better, yes, that's, again, choose your options: air quality or warm, cozy home that smells good. And open the window. Well, but it's the same concept, I think, of, well, yeah, pets are not the best thing for air quality, but I'm not going to give up my pet, so, and that's kind of the goal of the class, is to say you don't have to try to get rid of it. But if you are suffering from air quality, if you can lower in certain areas, that can make up for other areas where maybe you can't.
So what about, like, I use a plug-in, not like a diffuser, but essential oil, like blade or, everywhere.
And again, if you have chemical sensitivities or VOCs, that can compound it. So if you are suffering from air quality issues, that would be one of the things that I would maybe get rid of and try to see if it makes a difference. Allergens, dust mites. So some things to know about dust mites: washing your bedding in hot water. And again, even getting your bedding all washed in 130, most water heaters are only set to 130 degrees. So if your laundry room is upstairs and your hot water heater is in the basement, even that is going to be hard. Most of our bedding is white, so we can bleach it, because that will also kill them. Stuffed animals, pillows that aren't washable are disposable in our household, because they will attract a lot of that. When you see the mattress covers and pillow covers that say hypoallergenic, this is what they're protecting you against. They might be waterproof, but they're tightly woven enough that the bed bugs are not going to get into the mattress. That's what's making them hypoallergenic. So what we found with my daughter when she was younger, she had a lot of hay fever. When her symptoms would start to get really bad, what we would do is we would strip all the sheets, all the bedding, wash everything: bedding, pillows, covers, vacuum out the mattress, lift up the bed, vacuum, shampoo the whole bedroom, wash all the drapes, and she would wake up the next morning, not stuffed up, and it made a night and day difference, literally. And a lot of that is these allergens and dust mites. Cockroaches, thankfully, we don't have a whole lot. But again, something to keep in mind: even though you have pet-friendly, safe, green, environmentally friendly pesticides, they're still chemicals. So yeah, just keep in mind everything that you're putting into the air. VOCs, a lot of, again, maybe your balance is, I'm going to keep the candle going, I'm going to keep the Glade air freshener, but I'm going to spend a little bit more and get environmentally friendly cleaners that I'm using to mop my floor and wash the dishes. So interesting enough, I read a study where they went and they tested a bunch of college apartments, and they found that by and large the male were way cleaner and more less bacteria than
Oh,
because they didn't clean, especially with gross sponges and stuff that was constantly just spreading stuff all over it. So. All right, there's another virtual keyword. All right, humidity. So high humidity, keep your exhaust fans going when you're doing a lot of cooking. Get the air circulating, even though that a lot of the hood vents above your stove might just recirculate, it's still spreading it out rather than letting condensation accumulate. Whole house humidifiers are great. This piece right here has to be replaced at the end of every summer. These should only be running during the winter time. So before your furnace starts up, this piece has to be replaced. If not, go take a look at it and then you'll know why. They get really gross, especially with our hard water. They build up all kinds of water scale, which then harbors all kinds of bacteria and mold, and then you're just blowing that throughout your whole house. So they work great as long as they're maintained. Hood vents, dryer. Make sure your dryer discharges to the outside. Get those dryer vents cleaned out. Not great. I mean, it's better than nothing. We call it out during inspections. It should go to the exterior, but if it's going into the garage, you can start to cause humidity issues in your garage, not to mention your car is constantly covered with lint and dust. All right. We're about out of time. So sometimes simple lifestyle changes will dramatically improve. So we're not saying you got to fix all these things, but just pick a few and just focus on it. There's other things we didn't even talk about. You have to find this balance. Adding more plants can sometimes filter out some of those contaminants. However, a lot of the potting soil contains lots of funguses. So if you have sensitivities to mold, that may be worse. Adding lots of plants will help filter out some of those VOCs and some of those other chemical things, can freshen the air. So again, there's lots of balances, and the goal isn't to say, hey, we got to just fix all of this, but it's understanding, okay, I could do a little bit better than this. I could, the cleaners that I'm using could be a little bit more green or environmentally friendly, less VOCs. That's usually what it means when they say it's green or environmentally friendly. Usually means it's the chemicals that are not high in VOCs. Change that HEPA filter or get a new vacuum. Or when you're looking at remodeling, doing a hard surface floor instead of carpeting. Those are all things that you can do to overall improve the air quality throughout. If you really want to get into, those are all things that are really just more about habits. If you do want to look at things to spend more money, the only one I really want to talk about is it's either called an HRV or an ERV, heat recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator. So you can usually get this installed for under $2,000. And what it does is it's like, think of your bathroom exhaust fan that's constantly blowing air out. Well, what if that fan could also suck in as much fresh air, but it's using the warmth of the stale air, and it has a little heat exchanger where the air, it doesn't mix, but the temperature is transferred. So the stale warm air goes out, but as the fresh cold air comes in, it heats it up. So it's like having a window open 24/7. And so I've seen this. So for example, I had a friend, his wife was having a lot of issues. It was a new big house. Radon levels were in the 30s, extremely high, and his VOCs were about quadruple what we normally see. Formaldehyde was about double because it was a brand new house. A lot of stuff outgassing. She was having constant headaches. The only time she ever felt good was when she was outside, wasn't sleeping. They installed a few of these HRVs. Radon levels dropped down to the 6s and 7s, so it still needs a radon system, but that just tells you how much it's improving air quality throughout by just recirculating and adding more ventilation. There's a lot of other purifiers. UV, I'm not a big fan of. I don't know that they really do a whole lot. That's something that's another one of those upgrades that a lot of HVAC. There are ionization I'm a little bit more intrigued by those and the options and air purification qualities that they have. But the furnace filter, that's been the biggest one in my life. One other thing I didn't talk about, we had a mold problem in one of our rentals, talking with a mold guy. He said, you know what, just go get a box fan and get one of those good filters and duct tape it onto the back. I'm like, okay. He says that's those big air scrubbers that the remediators use to clean out after they've done mold remediation. He's like, that's all it is. It's just a fan blowing through a filter. He's like, so just get a fan and have it blowing through a filter. So we tried that with my daughter when she was having those allergies. It was like a really bad pollen, you know, just tons of pollen. She was just constantly stuffed up, wake up in the middle of the night crying because she couldn't breathe. So we did that. We started doing that. We just put the fan, duct taped it to the back of the box fan. We kind of set it, leaned it up against the wall in her bedroom. So it was just constantly circulating the air and filtering out all that stuff. We do that all the time now. Whenever allergies are getting high, my wife's family has a cabin out by Starvation. We'd go out there and it was like the first half of the day was just dusting everything because it was so dusty out there. Yeah, that one actually is dirty. And so I thought, and we were going to be coming back like 3 weeks later, and I'm like, I don't want to do this all over again because even after a few weeks, it would start to accumulate. So I'm like, and I brought a box fan and a fan, and I'm like, you know, I'm just going to let it run for the 3 weeks. We came back 3 weeks later, and there wasn't any dust. That filter, I think we almost probably burned the cabin down because that filter was so gross and it was overheating. But it was a good experiment. But yeah, definitely proved the point that it can pull a lot out of the air. So doing that with your furnace. If you have, that's the other thing too, that we tell a lot of people at home inspections, especially these townhouses, they have one furnace and then there are 3, sometimes 4 levels, and you have one furnace that's and one thermostat. Well, that thermostat, it's going to be that temperature on that level, but upstairs is going to be really hot, downstairs is going to be really cold. So that's another benefit of having that fan running 24/7 is it's constantly circulating the air, so you don't get such highs and lows depending on where sometimes the thermostat is upstairs. And so then the basement is like constantly on these huge swings because the upstairs is not calling for heat or not calling for air conditioning. And so having that running 24/7 also just makes the home more comfortable. Any questions? Did we get to all 4? Oh, there's our fourth word.
My head is kind of spinning, so I don't know what happened. I have it's been like a year and a half, and they're around with a lot of new construction.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just all of a sudden she reached out to me and told me headaches takes every week, and now they're like days and doesn't work, and I don't know. It makes me think maybe.
And she's been in the house about a year.
It just makes me wonder what's going on. Is she being affected by
What? It could be the new construction, and again, that's kind of what one thing to take away with this class is it's very often not one of these things. It's everything. And so if you think about, okay, she's probably dealing with VOC, she's probably dealing with all this. New construction is going to add a bunch of dust into the air, but now we're getting into so I have a hygrometer to measure humidity levels. In the summer, 30, 40, 50% is really standard. Last week, it was like single digits. So our humidity levels here in Utah are super low. So you compound that, okay, humidity levels are super low. It's also been super cold. There's usually a correlation between when it gets super cold, humidity also drops. So you're compounding all of those things. So what's happened over the last few months? Well, we've had really cold weather. We're keeping our homes really tight. We're running our furnaces a little bit more. Maybe you're running other appliances that you normally wouldn't be running. That can compound that as well. So again, it's look at everything.
So do you do a service where you can come in and evaluate?
So we've been doing a lot of those. So we'll look at it. Sometimes we'll start with mold. You'd be surprised. We've done mold tests on brand new homes, and we find mold issues in brand new homes. That can also, when we get really cold, if you have a home that wasn't insulated properly, you get warm air that gets into the walls or up into the attic, and it hits the cold exterior surface and forms condensation. Then you start to get mold growing. So sometimes you can have mold. So sometimes we'll start with mold depending on the symptoms and kind of just a simple inspection looking for any water issues. Sometimes it's drainage from the outside, sometimes it's ice damming from the roof. So mold test is often part of that. VOC test, we can do formaldehyde tests. When we look at any air quality things, it's not clients need to understand that it's a lot more a process of elimination than a process of discovery. So it's not like, hey, we're going to do this one broad test and figure out what's wrong. Usually it's, hey, let's do the most likely and rule that out. Nope, it's not mold. Okay, let's do formaldehyde. Nope, it's not formaldehyde. You know, my cousin came to me and her daughter was going to BYU. Her and her new husband just moved into this little apartment and had been suffering. She's starting to have all kinds of issues, just respiratory and headaches and just missing work and just, and my cousin was like, I think it's they're living in this little basement apartment. I think it's gotta be mold. It's gotta be mold. She's looking at the symptoms, it's gotta be mold. We talked more and more. We were about to go do a mold test and I'm like, let's do a meth test first. And sure enough, it was really high in meth. And so again, a lot of it is, we could have done a mold test and maybe would have found something, but looking more into it, yeah, meth was the more likely. So on some of these clients, it gets expensive. And so a lot of times I'll basically go through a lot of these things, try this, get the box fan with the filter, change your filter, run that, change your cleaning supplies, try all of these things first, because a VOC test runs about $500 per level per 2,000 square feet. So per level, because the test is ideally for up to 2,000 square feet per level in the home. So if you're on a 3-level home, then, so we did a house, it was a 6,000 square foot house on 3 levels, and we did some mold testing and VOC. It was about a $25,000, almost $3,000 to just do the VOC and mold testing and everything for that home. So it gets really expensive. So I'm more inclined to try to help them rule out, because that's all the VOC is going to, it's either VOC or it's not. Well, let's rule out some of these other things like, maybe it's allergens, maybe it's pollen, maybe it's, so we can start ruling out some of those things by doing the box fan, putting in the carbon filter that can help remove some of those VOCs, and just see if you notice a difference with doing those things that aren't going to cost you a ton of money. So I'm happy to talk to people and give them some consultation of things that they can do to try first.
And the box fan does what?
The box fan is,
so
box fan is good for removing allergens, dust, so if it's dust mites, put the filter on it. Yep, because then it's just, if you go buy a little room purifier, that's all it's doing. Yeah, and then just, yeah. So, so like Costco every once in a while has these room purifiers that are run on sale for $100, $150, and they're a little bit quieter and a little bit more.
Because they've been tested. I don't know. I'm so scared.
For me, it's like, okay, well, all that stuff I'm going and throwing away or wiping off the little filter, I would have been breathing otherwise or cleaning off elsewhere. So
Because they have a filter in them.
yeah, so like we have one in our bedroom, and it has a pre-filter, and that one is like, I'm surprised at how much dust, and then beyond that, it has a carbon filter, and then it has a really like pleated, for getting the really fine particulates back. So it's got 3 levels of filtration. I think it was like $150 at Costco, and it came with 2 years supply of replaceable filters. So I mean, those were great, but again, I'm not going to go spend $150 just unless I think I have a problem. I'd probably try the box fan, because you're $30 in a fan that you can use for a lot of other things, and maybe $15, $20 in a filter. Other questions? Told you you're going to leave this class and go, okay, now I got to go do this and this and this and this.
Well, so it sounds like maybe maybe I misunderstood, but could you just it seems like there just needs to be more circulation, or just kind of clearing out the air. Like, could you just open your window every so often for X amount of time and solve a lot of these problems, but
Mhm.
just getting some.
Yeah,
air
and that's
in
why
and
that
out.
ERV is so beneficial. Once you put
Like,
it
even
in.
in the winter, could you just open your window so many?
Yeah, it's gonna make a big difference. On that note,
days.
I had a friend that bought a house. It was back when all of a sudden prices were super great. He got this huge house, had high radon, but he's like, I'm not gonna be here very long, but I'm worried about radon, but no one's really using it in the basement. So he's like, I'm gonna try this. So they were on sale last week for Black Friday for $100. They're usually about 150, but it's a radon and it runs 24/7. So it gives you a all-time average. It gives you a weekly average and a daily average. So he put that in his basement, and then in his bathroom down in the basement, he installed a timer switch that just has the button. It hits like 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. And so he just, every time he was down in his basement and he saw that the weekly average was getting close to 4, he'd go hit 2 hours. And he was able to keep the radon levels
The window's
low.
open.
This was just the bathroom exhaust fan. Just
Oh.
circulate, because your home is not airtight. So the bathroom exhaust fan will pull air from all over. And so, we run our bathroom fan. Actually, I just go find me on Facebook. I just posted a video because we run our bathroom fan almost 24/7, also because it's right outside my kid's bedroom. So it kind of gives some white noise, but the fan burned up. And so I did a real quick video and just posted it last week that it like literally took me longer to set up the tripod and get my camera than it did to swap out the motor for a new fan.
My bathroom.
Yeah, if it's just the motor that's bad and it's the kind that it was like $40 on Amazon, and literally, like seriously, it took me longer to set up the tripod and get it aimed than to actually pull it out and swap it. So it's super easy. So yeah, bathroom exhaust fans, just running those 24/7 can make a difference.
If you don't want to open your window.
If you don't want to open your window, yeah. Now,
Kids that leave the doors open.
yeah. I will say one of my employees had high radon in her house, and while she was waiting to get a system put in, I said, hey, let's do some experimenting on your house. And so she would put the monitor in different parts of the basement and different parts of the house, just try a lot of different scenarios. And one thing that we did find was interesting, if you're opening upstairs windows and everything else is closed, it actually very often can increase radon levels because it's creating warm air is rising. And so it creates a suction in the lower levels of the house so the radon actually increased when her upstairs windows were open. So if you're sleeping upstairs, you've got kids in the basement and you're sleeping, getting lots of fresh air while you're sleeping, they aren't, unless you open their window too.
Yeah, you do have to create 2 open windows in 2 opposite ways, or else you never.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Which is, trivia, old Pioneer Century homes have the tall windows. Most of those windows open top and bottom. And that's was 100-year-old air conditioning.
So that open like the bottom and then the top.
Yep, and you'd get a cross breeze. And especially if you opened the bottom where it was blowing in on the north side, that was always shaded, that was always cooler air.
Yeah.
That's why all those tall ceilings and had the windows above the doors so that you could get cross breezes throughout the house. That was 100-year-old air conditioning.
Right.
But we just paint them all shut, so none of them work anyway. Any other questions?
Thanks for letting us pick your brain.
No?
Yeah, really important.
So